Okay. 30 seconds to 1 minute to introduce yourself so we have enough time for questions.
All right.
You want to do the timing?
Certainly.
Okay.
All right, so as everybody, I've met most of the people here. I'm Meenakshi Biyani, and I've been Parks and Rec Commissioner for the last 2 years. And of that 1 year, I was the vice chair. And it's like one of my goals as a commissioner was to improve the access to the Cupertino community park and rec facilities and the programs by bringing programming more to the residents. And during those 2 years, some of them ways I have found was to get the push for neighborhood events that became a pilot program last year. Listen to the community and bring the feedback to the department and the commission, and encourage the department to initiate a pilot program at Lawson School to improve the teen center access and bring the program to the teens where they are. So, and which it was quite a successful pilot. I also participate in a lot of other non-profit organizations. I'm part of Cupertino Sister City Committee, and I'm the volunteer chair for the Cherry Blossom Festival. And I'm part of the Cupertino High School Family Engagement representative to the district. Cupertino Grad Night Chair. And I volunteer for West Valley Community Service. I've been part of their silent auction for the Chef of Compassion. So I try to do a lot of volunteering work and engage with the community.
Great. So I think we'll each ask one question and see how much time we have for each person. So I will start first and then we'll go around. I would like to know what your thoughts are regarding the requests by the sports leagues to be using the parks on Sundays for organized sports.
So I think we have to look at the usage of the parks based on how much of the time is used by the organized sports and how much is left for the general public to use. I feel that there should be enough time given to the community to use the park and organize and be there to use the park for non-organized events, so that they can come and hang out, have picnics and play, and so there should be a balance between the two. Oftentimes I notice that based on the in the last 2 years, what I've heard more is that there are a lot of times organized sports are not entirely of the Cupertino residents, but a lot of them come from outside of the city too. So the residents of the Cupertino may lose out on the use of the facilities and the parks.
All right, great. Vice Mayor Chao.
What do you think the city should prioritize our different projects and the different challenges for parks and rec?
So we are almost in the final stages of master plan. I would like to see the way the master plan has been defined. It's a guideline to the council and to decision makers, but some of the smaller projects like accessibility to connectivity to the park system, better, smarter use of the facilities that we have. There is a lack of park space in the east and north side, so find the better or smarter use of what we have, because land can not be grown, but if we can find partnership with the school districts, and also when the development happens, have that as a kind of a requirement to have open space for the residents. I feel like there's the communication to the community is still lacking from it's there, but oftentimes we hear that there's not, they didn't know that this thing exists, or this program exists, or this feature exists. So a little better in communicating with the residents and people, and especially the youth. I realized, talking to some of the teens who came to give feedback on the master plan, that they did not know that they could actually come and rent the facilities from the park system. You know, they just think that when they have to run events from the school, they just have to stay within the school boundaries. And so by discussing with them, I realized that that communication needs to go out to all the students and clubs saying, here we can partner with you and give you the space and provide opportunities.
Why don't we move on to.
What are the top 2 or 3 things that you think will come out of the Parks Master Plan that you're most excited about?
Multi-use facilities that could be used both, irrespective of the age. In and out facilities that can be used for teens one day to run classes, or an individual person to rent the space for a banquet. Aquatic center, and that has been I've heard from a lot of people that there is a major need of it. Even though we have a lot of organizations and businesses who have swimming facilities around the city, they are kind of full capacity and they are not available year round for the residents. So something of that sort. I think more programming during the year round, like expand our neighborhood events to year round programming
Thanks.
available.
Thank you.
Great, John, once in a while.
So you talked a little bit about trying to get input from the community. What are those mechanisms, and how would you suggest getting more?
Right, so in the past few years, I've noticed the surveys don't usually get a very good response. People see it, they say, okay, yes, I will do it when I have the time. There, of 60,000 people, only if 900 or 1,000 people give the survey input, that's not sufficient. So have more focus groups. And in last week, we tried having the teens come. There were 50 plus teens coming and listening about the master plan, giving their inputs. Each of them filled out a comment card. So provide opportunities to a specific focus groups to be able to provide input and get to them rather than saying you come to us. So go to senior center. Unfortunately, the senior center, even though it was heavily advertised, it didn't get as much response. Only 3 people showed up to listen to the park. So provide, focus groups. Focus groups to stakeholders, sports people, teams. So get to them when they have the meetings, when they have the games. Go to them. Seniors, when they are out in the park, go to the parks and have a system. And invite them to, it's sometimes incentive works.
Okay, thank you. Is that out of time?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
All right.
So you can send in the next, well, no, we don't always get a chance for everyone. Darcy will go first next.
Good.
Are we going to have discussion when we vote, or?
That's a good question. We can, if you would like.
Yeah.
I've always liked.
Have a seat here, and there's seats all around.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Have a seat.
Thank you.
So, introduce yourself, try to limit it to 30 to 45 seconds, so we have enough time to ask questions. I will.
Okay, hi, I'm Carol Stanek. I think I've met some of you, at the tree lighting ceremony. I was the one wearing the Santa hat. Some of you said you don't always remember names and faces. I'm an incumbent commissioner. I bring lots of energy to the commission. I like to have fun. We call our commission the Fun Commission. I've been involved with Parks and Rec really since the scenic trail was being discussed and the restoration at Blackberry Farm. And I want to make parks better for Cupertino, and I want to make life better for our residents. And I think parks can do that.
Great, so Darcy will go first.
Can you tell us a little bit about how the off-leash dog issue got back onto the Parks and Recreation Commission agenda?
Sure. Can I watch that so I?
Oh,
so
sure,
Yeah,
yeah.
if you could just put it down, then I
All
know
right.
how long I'm talking. I don't want to go too long.
Okay.
So there is a group coming out of the Jolly Men neighborhood that a while ago they were just letting their dogs off leash, and then the city hired, and it was a really close-knit community, and they found a lot of they got close with their neighbors. We hired a new code enforcement guy, and he started ticketing them all. And in fact, he was maybe a little bit overzealous, going after one of the neighbors through their backyard. And the residents very respectfully came and brought a proposal to the Parks and Rec Commission. And in fact, also, part of our Cupertino 95014, I believe, their leadership group, they also had a project last year that was all about dogs. And so when this group presented their proposal, we said we'd like to know more about that. And so we asked to look into it.
Was there any consultation with council with regard to what was on the work plan or anything in that regard?
No, not at that time, because the way it was presented to us from staff was, would you like to look at it? Would you like staff to give you some background on it? And so we asked for that, and they came and brought that. I was disappointed in the way it got onto the council agenda, actually, as part of the work plan that you were looking at, because it hadn't even been presented to you. And I thought that was a real mistake. And it shouldn't have been on there when you had to line it up, because I understood the council was saying, why is this here? And that was appropriate, because it should have come through.
All right, let's move on. So I'll ask the same question I asked the previous person. What are your thoughts regarding the request for Sunday use of fields by the organized sports leagues?
You know, I think whenever there's a request, we should look at it, and we should look at the pros and cons. And that's what listening to your community is all about. I think there's a reason that our parks have Sundays off. The fields need time to rest. The neighbors often need times to rest, just from the traffic and all of that. But, so, I remember my last time I went through this 4 years ago. I think my mantra was, let's listen to the community. Let's listen to the community. And I felt like I just said it for every question you asked me. But it's still my mantra. Is like, should I decide that? No, I shouldn't. I want to hear from the community. And let's put it out there and hear and get some pros and cons. And if there's some mitigations that we can do, let's talk about them. What might those opportunities be?
Okay, thank you. Leon?
So what do you think are the priorities that we should set for the park master plan, and what challenges we have?
Priorities. The plan has priorities, actually. Actually, it has goals, and I have them here. There are 7 goals that are in the draft of the plan. I'm not sure where it is, and they're labeled MP1 through MP7. One of our feedback items was to not put them in an order of 1 through 7, because they are not ordered. And so when you see this, these are not in priority order, but these are 7 things, 7 ideas that we got from the residents through our surveys and all of the outreach that we've been doing. So this is already a consolidation of the goals of all of that. There's also outreach themes. And so this is where you can see the themes that the community was giving us on input, whether they be the facilities, the arts. Is it uniquely Cupertino? Is there cultural diversity? Is there equitability across? So there's so much packed in there. And so we've already done all that work. And I would say, look at these goals, because I was involved actually in helping identify these from the input, and we worked with the consultant. And so things like conservation, equitable access, and that's the east, west, north issues, quality of life, sustainability. And I really buy into these that are there, and I think this is, when it comes to you, this will be your opportunity to weigh in it as well. There's other things about the plan I could talk about.
Let's give Councilman Sinks a chance to ask
Hey,
a question.
so of this list of priorities and the things that you know that are likely the elements in the plan that you find exciting, what are the top 2 or 3 that you think add a lot to our life if we can complete them in the next few years? Anything in particular?
I think what I'm looking for is, how can we build our community? And one of the ways that I think we have to figure that out is when proposals come to us, there's a scorecard. And here are the things that we've talked about. How do we judge each of these things? And will it be safety and use? That's a criteria that has twice the input as how much funding is available. Is there, but for me, it's, does it build community? So for me, it's, can we get community out,
Okay,
talking to people?
So are there any elements of the
Yeah.
plan that you think particularly would do the best in building community?
So I think the plan doesn't point to specifics. The plan gives us a roadmap to say, this is how you evaluate things coming in, and we need to be open to those things. And so, for me, I wanna see things like using our parks for dance opportunities. 4 years ago, you asked me, Carol, what would you do if you get on the commission? I said, I would do a flash mob. And I did that. And
You did.
I did.
And I was sad I couldn't participate.
You may recognize this. This is
Yeah.
Overt Memorial Park.
Okay.
That is me there, front and center, doing a flash mob. And when you're out there, I'm a big consumer of all of the activities, the neighborhood events. So enhancing the, expanding the neighborhood events is one. Doing the inclusive playground is another. So those, whatever we can do to build community where we're talking to our neighbors, and it may be the dog park thing. Those people are very interested, and they believe that's made them closer to their neighbors. But figuring out how to balance that with people who don't want it. How do we make it safe for everyone?
All right, yeah, I think that's good. I think we're out of time now.
Oh, man.
I thought you had one here.
Huh? Oh, no, I was just timing each answer. I wasn't timing the
Oh.
whole interview.
Sorry.
Yeah, I
Do it
think we're
next
way
time.
over
Okay.
anyway.
Okay, just so you know, in China, this is me in China,
Okay.
dancing. This is what they do in the parks. It builds community.
Okay.
I think we should do that in City
Yeah,
Hall.
we should do that. We should do that in City
If
Hall.
I'm on the commission,
Thank
we'll
you.
get it done.
I think we should do it during council meetings.
I think we should.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Carol.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
7 minutes, next is Cathy Wang. So John, you'll go first in the
Okay.
next one after the introduction.
She's here, this is Cathy.
Hi.
Oh, hi.
So the way this works, give us a very brief introduction, about 30 seconds, and then we'll each have a chance to ask questions. Thank you for preparing a handout.
Oh,
That's always,
just did it last night.
always
at 12.
appreciated.
I'm sorry, I only have
Okay.
5. Oh, no, that's okay.
Okay, so, yeah, give us the introduction, and then Councilman Willie will go first.
Oh, okay. My name's Cathy. I'm a 16-year Cupertino resident and also an immigrant from China 26 years ago. I'm a mom with 2 college kids. Yes, and domestic. That's why, one of the reasons I'm here. They all went to Cupertino schools. I'm also a seasoned management executive, a successful businesswoman. I'm currently holding a position as Vice President of Product Management for ASI. You might have heard of it. Only
Yes.
he used to be our customer. Since 2008, And this is a 32-year-old private company located in Fremont with 600 employees and 17 locations in 4 countries. My job responsibility includes reviewing, selecting and managing product lines to maximize our profitability as well as top line through managing a product management BDM team in multiple locations. I'm also a passionate volleyball player and a park lover, which you know. I'm a good listener, a no-nonsense executor, and known for get things done through teamwork. The reason why I applied for Parks and Recreation Commission is, I have been playing outdoor volleyball at Memorial Park and Jolliman Park on weekends and jogging every weekday morning for the past 16 years. Parks are near and dear to my heart.
So can you finish that up so we
Oh,
have
sorry.
time to ask
Oh,
questions?
Okay, so, let's see, I guess I couldn't finish all of them.
Okay,
You
yeah,
want-
otherwise we won't have any time
Oh,
to
okay,
ask
go ahead, go
anything.
ahead.
So, Councilman Willie, you go first.
So the first one I would ask would be like, is there something that you'd like to champion pertaining to Parks and Rec? And sometimes it's hard to pick just one, so maybe picking 3, but if you have one, they sit there and say, you're passionate about this, you've been to our parks, you've seen them, you've seen the communities, is there something that just really you'd like to say, hey, I'd like to really work on this?
I want to start from the 20-year master plan, which I read through the 200 pages and also went to 2 commission meetings. And I have some questions, to hopefully the future commission, I can work with the future commissioner, work on them. That is, whether the $100 million project of Performance and Fine Art Center out of the total budget of $204 million, is that justifiable? Whether that money is well spent, because I do have the experience of budgeting and take the fiscal responsibility for that. So that's something I want to see, because it has a lot of impact to everyone who's living here in the past, in the next 20 years. And I also, want to increase the diversity of the Parks and Recreation programs, which will be very inclusive to all the communities of Cupertino City. And also, I have heard from people I talked to at the parks that they would love to have the kind of an equitable share of parks in all the city, not just at one part of the city. So that's something
Great,
I would
thank
like
you.
to.
Darcy?
So, having been through some of the Parks and Rec programs, what would you improve about them in terms of what you've experienced or what your kids experienced going through their offerings?
For me, because I've been, I'd love to have a park, shaded, when you're walking, when you're jogging. And for something, for Jolliman Park, for experiences, I've heard from joggers that they're against of having a free leash dog park, because they want to, there are so many sports activities there, and it would be affect more people and who can utilize the park. So,
Great, thank you. So I don't know if you've been following the issue with some sports leagues asking for Sunday use of our fields for cricket and for soccer. And I wonder what your thoughts are about, should Sundays be reserved for residents and field resting, or should we expand organized sports on our fields?
I have not heard about it, but I want to share my own experience. In the past 2.5 months, all Cupertino parks are closed because of the weather. So my team have been driven out of the Cupertino city. We played all in the neighboring cities. So I think, we shouldn't limit. I don't think we should limit, you know, not organized, it's just, sports there, on
I'm talking
Sundays.
specifically about when we, rent the fields to leagues. And then so when that happens, the residents don't have use of it for unorganized sports.
So your volleyball team won't
Oh,
be
the
able to use
unorganized.
it?
Unorganized.
Oh, yeah,
right.
yeah.
You won't be able to use it?
No,
the
not
field.
just for me, I think encourage the sports, the team, but not for the organized, sports.
All right,
We
thank you.
use on Sundays.
Yeah.
So we have big and small projects. How do you think the city should prioritize?
I read through the plan about the priority and sequence of it. I agree with the current, priority, but it seems like the projects that allocated to does not match the priority. You know, the top priority is nature, you know, to improve, for improvement of the current facility. But the most of the budget is contributing to a brand new one, you know, big ticket items. So I'm not sure the ROI justifies or matches the priority of the goals of the plan. So, did I answer your question?
Okay, thank you. We are out of time.
We're out of time?
Yes.
Oh, that was fast. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Who was it that said 100 million here, 100 million there, and
Pretty soon
you
it's
have-
real money.
Yeah.
Please have a seat here. Susan Wu.
Cool. So, the way this works is give us a brief introduction and please be brief, 30 seconds so we all have a chance to ask a question.
Okay.
Okay? Go.
Hi everyone, I'm Rahul Vasanth. I've lived and grown up here in Cupertino, major 5, gone through the elementary school, middle school, high school. And I'm a student in computer engineering. And last year I worked as a communications director and I had to balance public, private interests, many perspectives. I'm here today because I think that parks really offer so much to community. I know how much of an impact it's had on my life, just walking in Creekside Park with my family, playing soccer in the various fields. And I'm very excited to be here. I look forward to answering your questions.
Great. Ron, I think you were, right?
Yeah, sure. We're working currently on a parks master plan for Cupertino. What are the top 1 or 2 or 3 things that you would advocate for that you think we ought to be adding to the city?
I think particularly near my house on Tilson, there's Park Barnhart Park that I think could be expanded. I think there's a need for more grass or a little more open space in the area, and I'd also like to see.
How would you propose we do that?
You're talking about like in terms of
You said
construction
expand
or,
Sterling Barnard. How would you do that?
I think there is quite a bit of free space in the area, maybe extending it to the bridge or locating other areas in East Cupertino that might be good candidates for the park.
Any in particular?
Specific areas, I have to look into the what's available and what's
Keep going,
publicly
yeah.
owned.
Keep going on anything else that you might have.
Yes, so the area and the field right behind the library, I think having more of a connection between the library and that field, I know how much it offers in terms of just different events for the community. Working on better integration between the park and that specific field.
Thank you.
Okay. John?
Computer engineer.
Yes.
So, in order to, you know, kind of spend our money where the residents would want it spent and develop the things that they would want, any ideas on how to get resident input, engage residents? Got the money, got the people, how do we know what to focus on? How would you, with the latest technology and stuff, how would you foresee trying to increase that engagement?
That's a great question. One way I would say is, especially, is implementing whatever measure to get as much data, and hopefully have that data, guide data-driven policy where we have tangible, concrete numbers, maybe sensors at park entrances just to track foot traffic, to know who's coming in, perhaps looking at the usage of each field, whether that's for soccer, cricket, different sports, as well as maybe a firm requirement that at least 1,000 people are reached out to before making any major decision, both in cost, scope, or magnitude. We've got people who are very passionate about their parks, and I think that we shouldn't settle for anything less than something that has broad engagement and interest from a diverse group of residents here in our city.
Darcy?
So, if you were to consider just a novel issue, something like, we have a 9-hole golf course in Blackberry Farm, novel to you. So, what would your considerations be with regard to the question of what should we do with this space? And I know that it's probably an elaborate kind of process, but just some basic, principles going forward with regard to looking at this large municipal space and how it should be used going forward for decades. What would your considerations be?
I've visited it on one occasion. It's a beautiful space. It's very. I did think when I visited that maybe there should be some opportunity for the public to be able to utilize the area, maybe on a walk or certain times where everyone has access, or it's a little more available and more open. I know that some of the trees in the area might need to be replanted or replaced, and there's a lot of parking space there. I think those would probably be the main areas that I'd focus on and take a look at.
Great. So since you mentioned Barnhart Park, I will ask a different question than the other people. So behind Barnhart Park, you familiar with the Lawrence Midi parcel?
Yes.
That we have been considering. So what are your views on that in terms of what could be done with it, considering the proximity to Lawrence Expressway and the noise and if we did acquire it, what do you think should be there?
And you're not talking about Lawrence, but the park near Midi.
No, it's kind of behind Barnhart if you kept walking down that path.
Yes.
Towards the crosswalk to Midi High School, but if you kept walking further, there's a fence there now. But there's a big area that we have the opportunity to acquire.
Just west of
Yes,
Lawrence
yes.
Expressway, a strip of land there.
Okay, if I've got the right location in mind, I think that the city or our city doesn't maybe have as many publicly available tennis courts. That's something that I've heard people are interested in or they don't have access to in this area particularly. And I think really I would just look for as much being open, as much open space, and something that really brings people there. So tennis court would be one specific thing I'd like to see.
Okay. Leon?
So the city has limited budgets with many challenges. How do you think we should prioritize our different projects in terms of crops and recreation?
I think with as much community engagement and involvement, where the residents really have a lot more say and are able to, are kept in the loop consistently on what outreach. It's a community-driven process with, as much accountability, awareness, and especially when it comes to items on the budget that are on the higher end. I think that, again, a threshold of at least 1,000 people must be taken into account. it must be a diverse, representative group of all of the city.
Okay, all right, we're out of time. Thank you for coming.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hello. How do you pronounce your last name?
Kumarappan.
Kumarappan. Okay.
Kumarappan. Yeah, you can call Gopal. That's easy.
Okay.
Easy to pronounce.
So please give us a short introduction of about 30 seconds so we have enough time that all of us can ask you a question.
Sure. My name is Gopal, and I currently serve in the last 4 years on Library Commission. I'm an active participant in all the community activities, a preschool teacher, and my passion is to serve the community all the time, and this is one of the best needs that I came into. And the reason I'm switching from library to a different commission, especially Park and Rec, is that there are potential to connect with the community much more. That's one of the reasons I'm here.
Great. So I think Rod, you're next, right?
What are the 1, 2, or 3 biggest things that you think ought to be added to our Parks and Rec plan as we move the city forward? What would you like to see 5, 10 years from now?
Sure. I did gone through all the master plan currently what we have, which got inputs from people, and based on the current inputs, which is still I think only 679 respondents out of 30,000+ people we have, but still I respect those inputs. I think most of the time the top 3 I'm looking at is the place to connect people. Right now we are dispersed all along in different parts of the cities, so definitely we need a place to connect and collaborate. That's why I see it could be in a facility, it could be a park facility, or it could be an indoor, it could be a program room, or any of those things. More than the recreation, I would like to see places to connect people and then collaborate and bring it the best in the community. There are many facilities being listed. I'm not specific particular to 1 or 2.
So
anything which serves
what's
that.
deficient about the places we already have for that connection?
I'm sorry?
What's deficient with the places we already have?
Because right now there are a lot of areas where the utilization is not effective at all. So that's the one thing I wanted to see, that what is the utilization factor of each of those facilities, and what is stopping us? What is the roadblocks which we need to analyze? Like we do in a corporate, I would like to understand why it's not utilized, what's not allowing people to go and connect together. That's what I wanted to do. So this is a huge thing. Like if you're talking about 250+ million investment in 20 years, this should be treated as like a corporate where we serve the customers, like here we serve the community. I would like to put that kind of effect to understand, analyze the efficiency in each area, utilization factor. And based on that, let's connect the community.
All right, why don't we move on, John?
So it sounded like, not much community input based on the size of our community. Any ideas on how to get, obviously we want to spend our money where the residents want it. What ideas might you have to truly get more of a participation, and so how can we get that?
Yeah, so one of the things is that active participation, it was even lagging the library area when I started 4 years back, mainly because the awareness among the people, what are the facilities and what it is. Many people even don't know that those facilities we have, even in the library. I'm just taking library as an example. Then we started really reaching out to packets of groups, and then from there we connected, either through school system or through the communities on a specific one, and say these are the things we have. More outreach about bringing awareness. Right now the awareness is, a lot of areas is completely missing. That's what I looked at it. So once you bring more awareness, they say, oh my God, I didn't know that, e-library. I don't have to go through by any software. I can get everything from library. Many people doesn't know about it. So that's when it is missing. That's why only 679 respond, and so far in the master plan survey, and only 30 people actively participated in the workshops. Why not? like it's less than 1% or less than 2%. So that means we need to, while outreach is good so far, but I think we need to go very aggressive and tell them the benefit what we bring in. Once we tell them and bring it, I'm sure people will come out of the shell and try to do it. Right now, awareness is missing.
All right,
That's
let's
one
move
I
on.
would do.
Darcy, go.
Do you have experience with outreaching to our community, and if so, what do you find to be the most effective mechanisms for outreach?
Again, I'll bring the same experience what I recently had in the last 2 years with the library. We had a wellness program, we had education programs. Those are the ones it's unbelievably successful right now. We get at least 100, 150 people in every program simply because partnering. Because a lot of great corporate and other programs available, people are available to partner. Once we go on the join hands with them, and when I bring the benefit here, people see it. So 2 things, especially the wellness program, if you look into it, 150 people is coming on it. We couldn't even get the chairs to really do it. That's just an awareness campaign to reach out and see the benefit, exactly what they want. They were looking for a health related one. Once we get the pulse of them, when we expose to 2 or 3, it really helped.
So since you mentioned wellness, we have a lot of playgrounds for kids, but when I was in China, I saw more, they were like playgrounds for adults. The equipment was geared to adults. And what do you think about doing some of that in some of our parks, just to appeal to a wider age range for you?
Yeah, it's absolutely important, because one thing is that while we focus on community, we focus on kids and K through 8 or teens, but we simply don't focus on adults, where even adults and seniors, and especially the way in which we work on sedentary, sitting in front of the computers and all the things, we don't even get up and walk most of the time. And if we really force them and connect them with the teen programs, then in the park with the facilities, obviously we can create more of those adults to come and do that. So absolutely, I would love to.
Okay.
The city has limited budgets. We have so many interesting projects. How do you think we should prioritize?
Well, again, the number one is that while we have a lot of these things, and we need to, first I would like to know existing facilities, what the utilization factor, how do we really optimize it, bring more efficiency within that. Plus, we can just add on instead of bringing something completely new. Based on the master plan, completely analyzed all the 200+ pages. And I think the way investment should be appropriately done based on the inputs from the community. 679 is very, very low, so I would like to reprioritize all the inputs. I would like at least 20% of the population. Sorry, I just put in my own thing to make sure that I don't go over 7.
Okay. So how are we doing on time now?
10 seconds.
Okay.
So,
There we go.
So, yeah, I don't think we have time for another question then.
yeah, I just put in something in case if you really think that something can help, I just put it something else, I can share it.
Oh, great, thank you, that's always
For
helpful.
what I bring in from corporate and the community side, we should help you to make the calls. Thank you so much, I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So next is Geoffrey Paulsen. Okay, Mr. Paulsen, why don't you spend 30 seconds introducing yourself and try to keep it short so we all have a chance to ask questions.
Okay, Geoffrey Paulsen, been a Cupertino resident for 33 years. Related to parks, I was a park ranger for 7 years, worked as a park planner for the Peninsula and Mid-Peninsula Open Space District, managed a 400-acre forest in Mendocino County, and I've also served on commissions for 14 years in the city, including a stint on the Parks and Rec Commission.
Great, so I think Ron, you're next.
What are the top 1, 2, or 3 things that you think you'd like to see Cupertino put forward in Parks and Rec as part of the master plan or otherwise to
Okay.
yeah, change the landscape here?
Yeah, I'm really excited about the Performing Arts Center. I know there's not a lot of funding or space, but nonetheless, I think it's an important concept for a community that's intelligent and has a lot of musicians and artists and that kind of thing. That's first. Second, I'd like to see parklets. That was one of my ideas on that commission. Little interstitial open space areas where people can enjoy a tree or a bench at the end of the street if possible. And third, I would like to see more parking for open space. People circulate around Rancho San Antonio. I know Rancho's not our jurisdiction, but people get very frustrated when they try to go on a hike. And hiking was a big, popular issue when we surveyed the public in terms of what they wanted in parks.
Thanks.
Great, John.
So, I'm kind of very focused on residents and finding out what the residents want, where
Yeah.
they want us to spend the money.
Yeah.
Any good ideas on how to get that resident engagement, resident ideas?
You know, first, I really appreciate your interest in the public. I know you've said that repeatedly, and I think it's not something you're just saying, it's something you really mean, so I appreciate that. You know, I think, the little events, booths at public events, fairs, where they put little dots on what they're interested in, that seems to be a way people can respond. Phone surveys are helpful, online surveys, you know, website comments, all those are helpful tools.
How would you handle the issue of off-leash dogs in Cupertino? And you can go, you know, where you want with the topic, but I've noticed that it has reemerged as an issue recently. It didn't actually go through our council, and it wasn't at our behest. So just any thoughts on that particular topic?
Yeah, a lot of people like to have their dogs off leash, myself included. Sometimes we'll go to these dog off leash areas or dog parks. It's a really tough one, Darcy, because not all dogs are the same. You know, some dogs are controllable. I talked to one fellow who said, my dog can outrun a bobcat. And I said, well, you know, how do you know? I mean, so we do have dogs that like to chase wildlife, and that's not a good thing. So I think off-leash should be restricted to controlled areas, probably a fenced-in dog park in a city like Cupertino.
Great. What are your thoughts regarding Sunday use of fields? I don't know if you notice a lot of cricket and soccer players have been coming to advocate for Sunday use of the fields for organized sports, which right now I guess is not permitted.
You know, when I was a commissioner, I was told that, it's not to cast any aspersion on the cricket folks, but it's not a large number of people. Maybe there are more now than there were advocating for cricket. They're strong advocates, they're powerful advocates. I know that turf needs to rest, you know, for a day. It's tough when you, especially when the rainy season is here, when you use turf every day, it can damage the turf. I think we could look for more areas to have turf. I mean, that may sound like an impossibility, but there's an open space area up in the hills. It was an abandoned quarry. It was part of the Parkside Trails development, and there's a lot of flat area there that could be developed for playing fields.
And who owns that?
It's a private developer right now. Yeah, but I'd like to actually see it be open space and give him some density credits to build something more dense down in Stevens Creek and leave that as open space.
Who's the developer?
I met him at the planning counter. I forget his name. I don't have his card.
John?
So the city has limited budgets and so many demands. How do you think we should prioritize our projects?
According to what the public wants. I think you have to really survey the public, find out what their priorities are. We all have our ideas, especially what's best for our children, but that's not always what they want. So I think, ask the public. Right now, federal funding's kind of dried up, but there are opportunities for public-private partnerships that I think we can pursue.
Great.
Back to me?
Did you already have a question?
Yeah.
Well, this is going really fast, so.
Sure. We're trying to help you
have another one.
regain your schedule, yeah.
How would the experience that you had at Mid-Penn, being a ranger, doing park planning, how would that contribute?
You know, I learned a lot about the open space district, and some things I didn't like. I was in a staff meeting, and they said, well, if you do that, you'll attract the 408ers. And the operations manager said, excuse me, the 408ers? And because
you mean the
people
people that live in.
People live in that area, so it started out as kind of a 415 and then 650. So there is a kind of a north-south elitism in the district, okay? There's also a tendency
Talking about
to.
Foothill Park in Palo Alto.
Well, that's the worst. That was my family's ranch, but that's another issue. But anyway, so I would like to see I'd like to just work with the district for more, parking, for more,
Are there,
use of the preserve.
we've talked about that twice, so
Yeah.
are there particular parks in Cupertino within our jurisdiction that you think are underparked?
Well, I think that McClellan Ranch is working on it. We approved a parking area that's gonna be expanded, so I don't think that area is underparked, but certainly the rancho is infamous for being underparked.
But that's
No?
not our- that's
Yeah,
not our
I'm saying-
domain.
No, I know, and, of course, Fremont Older as well, but I don't think any city park is underparked, except perhaps what, McClellan Ranch is.
But is Fremont Older, is that in our city limits?
No.
It's not, okay.
So I have a little thing I'd like to follow up on my question
Yeah.
regarding the survey. I mean, you said we should survey to find out what people want. Do you think we've done enough survey for the Performing Arts Center?
That's a good question.
10 seconds.
No, I don't think we've done enough. I think we need to survey some of the art schools, music schools, that kind of thing, as well as just the general public survey. That was
All right,
6
thank
seconds.
thank you.
That's it, thanks.
Thank you.
Next is Catherine Moore.
Ms. Kitty, have a seat here, please. You can put that on the table, on the floor here.
Okay, why don't you give us a 30-second brief introduction, pass out your
30
material,
seconds.
and,
Okay.
yeah, you can start while.
And I can sit. Okay,
Yes.
my name is Kitty Moore. I grew up in Vermont, which is an outdoor recreation playground. I went to college on a 4-year Air Force ROTC scholarship studying civil engineering. My husband and all my siblings are armed forces veterans. I've lived in Cupertino since 1995 and have raised our 2 college-age sons here. I have volunteered in the community in different capacities, teaching art, running a soccer program with 10 coaches that I hired, and managed competitive soccer travel teams. I want to serve the community and help you to do your job as city council by providing good advice and information to lead our city into the future. I know your time is limited, so let's
Okay,
begin.
John, you go first.
So, what would be the thing most that you'd like to champion? Is there something that you really could champion? I mean, everything seems to be big, takes teams and things, but if you were to say, gee whiz, I'd like to try to champion one thing, may or may not be able to get 100%, but we'll move that ball down the field, what would it be, or maybe 2 or 3 if there are smaller things?
2 or 3.
Up to you.
There's some little things,
Yeah.
and then there's some big things. So little things, bee gardens, butterfly gardens, and some of these odd spaces that we have in our parks. For instance, Creekside Park has a little odd jogged area that's between 2 of the houses, and that would be an ideal place to do some, native plants and to help attract butterflies and bees to the area. And we would also want to do this dispersed across the community, because as people have stopped watering and gardening as much as they had because of the cost of the watering, they aren't putting as many flowers out, and it's hurting the environment really. So the city can actually help with that. And for big things, our largest development, we're going to be losing some recreational areas, our bowling alley and our ice rink and possibly our gym. So we want to find a way to have those come back to the community and have them not necessarily be private enterprises, because when you make it pay to play, it can be prohibitive for some of the residents. So if you have areas that are park deficient and you're putting in recreational facilities and they're privately owned, then it makes it hard for some people to be able to access that. And we want to have park equity across the community.
Great. Darcy?
What are your thoughts thoughts on off-leash dog hours, or just off-leash dogs in general in our parks?
Wow, okay, so that has been a hot topic for a long time. And I know years ago they were trying to look at it over maybe at Hoover Park, and there was a lot of pushback. I know our neighborhood park over at Creekside, people will come and do the off-leash dog hours on their own informally, and it is a violation of the municipal code. So I know it's popular to have it. I don't know how to have it arranged when you have a field that's programmed already, because you've got soccer programmed there until dusk, which basically means that they're not supposed to be out there with their dogs. So we do need to provide some areas for it. I'm not sure where.
Great, thank you. So your civil engineering background, how would you deal with this proposed Lawrence City property, since it's kind of in a noisy area, the access is kind of limited? What would you do there? If we were to purchase it, how would you make that into a usable space, and what kind of things?
That's a really tough question. I looked at, they have the clear sound walls. It really depends on how much money you want to be spending at this location. There's clear sound walls that can be installed in the area, but that would probably be really expensive. I think it really depends on how much you want to invest at that location, because you don't have parking, and right now, probably the best solution I've heard is have it be basically a stopping area for people who are biking, but you want to hang on to it because you need the connectivity, heading out in Lawrence area. It's very challenging. It'd be nice if you could have some naturalistic creek access somehow, have a safe way to get down to it, something like that. But when you're talking about dealing with the noise, unless you're going to put a lot of money into it, I don't see how that can be mitigated.
Great, thank you. Leon?
Hi, we have limited budget and so many demands. How do you think the city should prioritize our projects?
Limited budget. Well, I would go back to the survey results that you have, and I would make sure that they are reflective of what the residents are looking for first, because we have some very expensive suggestions like the Performing Arts Center, and there may be other ways to, if the community wants that, there may be other ways that you can partner and get that kind of space. But I would, like I said, go back to the survey data, because I think there's some questionable parts in it, that it's not statistically all relevant. There's some parts where people are not being represented in the data.
Great. Rod?
Yeah, you talked about the flowers and butterfly gardens and things. What other things would you like to see Cupertino have that we don't have? Facilities, programs in the next 5 to 10 years.
Okay, I've got a little list of them. Okay, so this is stressful being here. I think it would be great if we had some quiet spaces for meditation located away from the playground areas where it's very noisy. Some different kinds of gardening space. It could be a Japanese type garden, that type of thing. That's something that I'm interested in. We have yet to have a history museum located. That would be perhaps a standalone structure, maybe using some of the underutilized buildings like Stockelmeyer. You did not ask the underutilized park question, but you have Fletcher House, which is a very interesting property, really close to the creek. Let's see, also consider year-round swimming, badminton, futsal, basketball court areas, trampoline centers, climbing walls, and I also do have the off-leash area mentioned. That's something to look at. And like I said before, replacements for the gym, the ice rink, and the bowling alley.
Great. All right, we're out of time. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Please have a seat here. This is Xiangchen. You can put your It's okay, if you wanna just put it.
It's fine.
Here, you can put it. Yeah, there you go.
Why don't you give us about a 30-second introduction, and then we will ask questions for the next 6 minutes after
Maybe if I
that.
could get, Chris, could you make copies of this?
Sure.
Cause since we didn't have enough.
Sure. My name is Xiangchen Xu. I'm a Cupertino resident for 8 years, and now I'm a digital designer, and I have 2 kids. My son was in the school district for last 8 years, and I did some school volunteer, and I also do some other volunteer job in communities and event. And because my son has moderate autism, so he has sensory issue. He's sensitive to the indoor light. That's why he likes outdoor activities. So in last 10 years, I brought him to almost all the parks in South Bay, and even the parks in Fremont. So I think I have a lot of experience for different parks, and have some, learned a lot from that. I hope my experience can help our city, if I can serve in the park commission.
Great. I think you go first, John.
Okay, digital designer, so not quite, the computer engineering, maybe not, but, trying to make sure we put our money in the right spot, getting community engagement and community input. Any good ways to do that you know of? How do we get the input so we make the right decision? We and the park commission make the right decision.
Yeah, actually, I attended several park commission meetings, especially the meeting about the master plan last week. And I have to say, I was surprised to see our city in the master plan, they put almost half of the funding for the new performance center at Velco. I think that plan was already on hold. And another thing is why they need $100 million for that performance center. But in the previous survey, they said the highest vote is for that. So, and I asked my friends in my daily life and my friends online, none of them think it's reasonable. So I guess maybe in this new age, people using network, maybe our city can change some outreach ways, maybe not only put some post in park or doing some paper survey or invite people to the meeting, because last week the outreach meeting, only 6 to 8 residents there.
Oh.
I don't think the data they collected can be accurate.
Yeah, I don't know if that survey actually included how much money it would be spent on that. It may have just said, which do you really want? So that may be why, but if it had been done with how much each cost, it might have been different. Anyway, Darcy, it's your turn.
So the issue of off-leash dogs has recently rearisen, and it wasn't something that was directed by our council, but it was something that the Parks and Recreation Commission decided to take up. How do you feel generally about the issue, and if you were tasked with outreaching to our community, how would you go about making sure that the different parts of the community are accurately represented?
Actually, I think maybe we can work with some other commission. Maybe I think actually library is a place to reach diversified people, because in that park commission survey I saw most of the people were white. I didn't see there's 0 Chinese feedback, but I think if we can do some outreach program at library, we see a lot of Indian and Chinese people. I think they represent the diversified population in Cupertino. And I also believe some online survey, maybe on Nextdoor, or maybe we can have some link, and we can post on WeChat, on WhatsApp for different people, for different groups. That may be useful.
So you mentioned about playgrounds and your son. So what could we do in Cupertino to have more inclusive playgrounds? it's not, I know there's a proposal to build one, but is there equipment that you could put at every playground that's not outrageously expensive that would help the developmentally challenged kids?
Yeah, actually, I know the Magical Bridge Park in Palo Alto is very famous. Yeah, my son went there 3 times. He really likes that park. But I heard that's very expensive. I can give you another sample, like the Fremont Central Park along there's a trail along the Elizabeth Lake, and there's some very cheap, I think low-cost equipment, just like the simple obstacle course, like the balance beam, and when you can take a walk around the lake, and after a while you see a parallel bar, after a while there's a balancing beam, and after a while there's some big stones, small stones, the kids can jump up and down, and my son really likes that. That's low cost, but that's like the sensory diet for the autistic kids. I mean, I think some typical kids also likes that. Yeah. So and I think another thing impressed me is renovation of the Kalabada Park. Before, Kalabada Park has a new equipment, new playground. Not so many people there, but now in weekend it's always crowded, and my son also likes that place. And talking about east side Cupertino, the Lawrence Meaty Park, I heard someone said the noise issue may be a concern, but actually my son, I think the low frequency noise, it won't bother him. We went to the small Barnhart Park in summer almost every day, and because east side people, they don't have parks, so every night in summer, every night after work, the small park is crowded. That's a car park without restroom, but even so many people still go there because we have 0 park. So I think
Leon?
So with limited budget and so many demands, how do you think the city should prioritize our projects and programs?
Yeah, I think maybe improve some parks, that's enough. Just like the Kalabada Park, as I said, in West San Jose, in the past, not so many people there. So that land almost wasted. I visited there twice, almost no people there. There's the equipment was so old, but after the improvement, it's a great place for kids to play. And I also think maybe there could be some cooperation between the different commission, or even from our city, and the school district. In last week meeting, actually 3 residents questioned the master plan, why we put so much money on building so many basketball courts in our parks. Why cannot we just use CUSD schools equipment? And the city staff's answer is, we cannot force CUSD to open their facility, their fields in weekend. But I talked to CUSD people, they said CUSD needs money. If you can rent, you're not forcing us, you just rent.
Okay,
Maybe we can cooperate.
Let's finish up because we're out of time. Okay, thank you. We're done.
Thank you.
So, I hope everyone is taking notes and ranking, because we don't want to vote yet, because so many of the people have also applied for other commissions as well. So, some of them may be more appropriate for other commissions. So just, if you could maybe rank them on the sheet, and then when we're ready to vote later, we can do so.
Do you want to take them as a group?
Well, yeah, I don't want to vote now because.
Thank you.
Because so many of these people apply for other commissions.
There are also 10 cross applicants for tomorrow.
Right.
Across, including library and planning, so you may wanna wait till. the
Right,
end
that's why I
to
like,
use-
if you can just, rank them all, and then, I've been taking notes for each one and ranking them as I go along.
So we will vote at the end of tomorrow.
Right. Unless there's no cross on something. I'm not sure.
I'm still a little confused. So you've got some people that are gonna be on multiple commissions.
Right.
How do we rank them in the sense
Well,
of,
they may rank at the top on planning, but they may rank in the middle on Parks and Rec, so, you know, it would, especially if they're ranking close to the top on two of them, and you also wanna look what they're most interested in.
So you're saying we
Yeah.
need to use that in the ranking, cause that's kind of my question, you know. If somebody says, has here that it's their second choice, something else is their first choice, and we're saying, well, they're great here, then maybe we're not really, focusing where we should, because we're going to possibly wait until the next time with the next commission. I'm not sure that came out right.
No, it didn't. Anyway, I think we have a break now, right, for.
Yes, there is a 20-minute built-in break.
Okay.
If you're concerned about running a bit behind, there are 5 cancellations in the next planning commission grouping, so.
Whoa,
wow.
can you tell us which one, so we can cross it
There,
off?
you have an
crossed
updated
out.
schedule in front of you, except for we did just receive an additional for number 20, Simran Rahija. Canceled for planning, but she would like to keep her housing.
So you're saying
in
this one
car.
supersedes this one?
Yes, the one that's it's been revised on the 28th today, upper right
One
hand
slash
corner.
28. Now you said that there were, they both have 21, and you're saying there were 5 canceled, but one got added.
Yes, number 20, Simran.
Okay.
She
Oh, I
canceled-
see, they're
she just
crossed out.
canceled, yeah, she
Oh,
just-
you didn't take them off the list, you just crossed
Right.
them out, gotcha.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, let's take a break and eat, and then come back in like 15 minutes or so.